Grafting is the art and science of joining two different plants together to create one single plant with the benefits of both varieties. The best time of year to do this is whilst the plants are still dormant and just before the sap begins to rise, so I tend to do this in February. I'm looking specifically at grafting apples in this video, and it all starts with a dwarfing rootstock. Dwarfing rootstocks were created or developed to create a tree that was smaller and more compact. It basically stunts the overall height of the tree, and this makes all operations much easier and accessible, such as pruning and harvesting. I produce my own dwarfing rootstocks, but you can buy them online from wholesale nurseries and specialists. I begin the process by planting a dwarfing rootstock and cutting it hard back, and as it begins to grow I earth up the soil around it, rather like potatoes. And what happens is, over the course of a year, you get roots forming at the base of the stems that are underground. I harvest these after 1 year by cutting them back just below where the roots are forming, and you can see this on this photograph. Here's my harvest for this year. I've got quite a few good sized rootstocks, but they're a little bit too young for grafting onto, so I have to then plant them out in a long row and leave them in the ground for a year so that we get better roots forming and the stems are a little bit thicker for grafting onto. Here are the rootstocks that I lined out last year, and these have been grown on for a second year, and now they're large enough to graft onto, and you can see that the roots have really developed nicely and the stems are a good size for grafting. The next thing I do is pot them up in some good quality potting compost, and now what we need are the scions. So here we have a row of cordon apple trees. They're grown at this special angle to make growth very compact, and to get better fruiting along the stem you need a dwarfing rootstock to keep the trees very compact like this. But the other thing that I grow them for is to be able to harvest the scion material, and that's the pieces of named varieties that I'll be using to graft onto my dwarfing rootstocks. I'm looking for something that's about a pencil thickness at the base and 1 year old growth. So I shall go and take 1 or 2 right now so that I can start grafting. So here's quite a nice one. It's just the right thickness at the base and it looks really healthy. So I shall take that one off, leaving just a couple of buds. And actually this has a dual purpose because it's going to start forming these little spurs which will bear the fruit for next year on this little short piece of stem. So I've actually collected a whole load of different scions. You can see they're all in separate bags. This is so that I can remember which variety is which. It's really important that I label my trees correctly, or else I won't be able to sell them. These are all old heirloom English Nottinghamshire apple varieties, so they're quite old-fashioned varieties that you don't see in the big garden centres, and we specialise in this sort of thing on our nursery. So to begin grafting, I'm looking for a nice smooth piece of stem on the rootstock about 15 centimetres above the soil level. I'm choosing my scion here, and I'm looking for a nice healthy bud on a piece of stem that's a similar diameter to the rootstock. I'm then going to make a diagonal cut behind the bud so that it fits kind of neatly on the side of the rootstock. It's a type of side grafting called whip and tong grafting, or greffe anglaise in French. And I'm going to put a little tong into this cut so that it kind of helps it to join together onto the main stem, where I'll put a corresponding cut. I then need to match it up and try and make a cut exactly the same size on the rootstock. It's really important that the edges of both cuts kind of match up as much as possible. Now I'm putting the tong into the rootstock cut, and I'm trying to make that correspond exactly with the one on the scion, so that they slide in together and make a really strong join. I've just cut that off at 4 buds. That's about the right size. And there I am sliding the 2 tongs together And that should hold together by itself, but I'm going to put some grafting tape on, and this really is just to keep the rain out of the join so that if it freezes it doesn't push it apart. And I'll keep this grafting tape on for probably about 2 months until the union is well formed. So when we make the cut in the scion ready for grafting, what we're looking for is a nice long straight cut that's as flat as you can get it. You should only really do one strike, you can't mess around with it, and you should never touch it afterwards. But it's the little piece just under the bark that looks slightly green. That's what we call the cambium layer, and we need to match this up with the cambium layer on the rootstock so that the vessels will join together and form a union. And on the other side of this, here is the bud that will form the first growth. It's important to label up your trees as soon as you've done them, because they all look the same at this stage, and it's very, very easy to forget. So this one's a Markham's Pippin. This is an old Nottinghamshire variety, and it's grafted onto a dwarfing rootstock, and I've made a note of which rootstock it is on the back. This is a semi-dwarfing rootstock called MM106. So here's the result of an afternoon's work, and I'll be growing on these grafted young fruit trees for about a year until they're ready for sale. And here, in true Blue Peter style, is what I did earlier. In fact, I did this this time last year, and you can see this sort of bulge in the stem here. That's where the two different plants have joined. So the scion is here, and this is the rootstock. And you can possibly just make out the little tongue that I put into the graft, which helps it to lock together. So this is now 1 year old, and these are potted up and ready for sale.